Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me for this lesson this evening. My name is Mr. Aegis, and I will be your teacher. I am a health teacher in the real world, and I stream indie games, classic games, retro stuff, and I give health and wellness lessons on the weekend. Like tonight, our lesson is going to be on the topic of self-talk. The things we say to ourselves and how we say them, and how they affect our bodies and brains, and how we can do it better, how it can help or hurt us. So, let's talk about it. First things first. What is self-talk? Think about it. Think about it and type your answer in the chat if you like. What is self-talk? What does it mean? As you think about it, I would say it's internal dialogue or internal monologue. Talking to yourself about yourself. The narration and commentary about the things going on, about you. Talking to yourself about yourself. It's not the same as ruminating or rehearsing or reimagining, which we all do as well. Reimagining the things that have happened, ruminating on what's happened and what we want to do in the future. Not just the words and the voices in our heads. Specifically, things about ourselves. These are very automatic thoughts that are specifically about us. Commentary about us. Yes, Zetsun Alpha and Mortham. Internal monologue. And you hit something very important on the head as to its origin that we're going to talk about quite a bit. Not just talking to ourselves that we do all the time, of course. Very specific kind of internal dialogue. We may ruminate on school problems or rehearse what we want to say when we get to work and talk to our boss. Not quite the same as our normal stream of consciousness. It's a combination of things. Our thoughts, beliefs about ourselves, a part of our stream of consciousness, but it's separate. I've thought this particular quote from Plato has always been very interesting to me. He said, "I mean the conversation which the soul holds with herself in considering of anything. I speak of what I scarcely understand, but the soul, when thinking, appears to me to be just talking, asking questions of herself and then answering them, affirming and denying." So, certainly something people have been thinking about for a very long time. What is this voice in our head, and why is it saying these things? A conundrum for philosophers and psychologists alike for a very long time. But I want to hear first some examples from you. Before we get into it exactly, let me see how you would define it, and how you would demonstrate the concept of self-talk. I see. You have too many inner monologues? Mortham say, "Whoa, Mortham, that was stupid. Way to mess that one up." Very good example. Cyrus say a problem with it is that your brain trusts itself more than anyone else. Easy for it to convince itself that it is terrible. Very, very true. Pull the lever? No, do not pull the lever. Don't pull the lever, Kronk. Okay, so it seems like you have a pretty solid understanding of what self-talk is. Raven, you say your brain is running a little bit too fast to remember what it tells you. Perhaps that's a blessing in disguise. Of course, I do have some examples of my own. We can just talk about it for a minute. Last year, sometime about winter, well, I guess that's more than a year now, I went to a convention out of town, and while I was in the bathroom, at this large convention hall, lots and lots of people. I put my phone down on the sink and I turned to dry my hands after I was washing them, because we always wash our hands after we use the restroom class. 1 in 3 people don't. It couldn't have been more than 30 seconds after I had started washing my hands, but I turned around and my phone was gone. And of course I panicked. I was angry and I was anxious. It wasn't just about being out of all the money that a new phone would cost me and the annoyance and the inconvenience of having to get a new one. I was stuck far from home without my main means of communication in the middle of a convention where I was supposed to be having fun and relaxing. So what do you think my self-talk was like when that happened? What do you think I was talking to myself about when I turned around and realized, oh, I had put my phone down in a public place? When I turned back, it was gone. Very negative, Cyrus, you say? Very angry, Mortham? Yes, yes. Yeah. A lot of, I'm so effing stupid. What the hell is wrong with me? How could you be so stupid? Why would you do something so dumb? That's the kind of self-talk that occurred. Thought about how I had ruined this entire thing for myself. I'd worked so hard to have the time and the money to go to this event, and now it's ruined. Now it's ruined. Why do I always do this? What's wrong with me? Some of you may resonate with that. Exactly, Wes. Might resonate with how I just described it. So why do we do it? I don't mean why do we do it negatively. Why do we do it at all? Why do we do self-talk? As Empress asks, is self-talk bad? Well, let's talk about why we do it at all. Why does self-talk occur? Where does it come from? How does it arise? Is it inborn? Well, many believe it's in some ways ourselves internalizing socialization. That is, when we begin as children learning how to relate to others, that is that we, while we're unique individuals, are not actually the center of the universe, that we're wholly different and separate from everyone else. We begin taking what we're learning and we start applying it inward. We relate to ourselves, so we start talking to ourselves. It is speech applied to the self. I think it does help to explain how it feels like we're talking to a different person. We use speech, which we begin to learn very early, to relate to ourselves. Very often, it's out loud, and you probably notice this among children. They talk to themselves out loud, and they never stop talking. Gradually, it becomes more and more internal and private as time goes on. Did I ever get my phone back? No, I did not. I had to go and get a new one, and it was an entirely outrageous hassle because my phone carrier at the time was very unhelpful. So I had to go get a new phone at a new carrier, and it was a big deal. And I didn't stop harassing myself about it for quite a while. Raven, you once left your phone in another room at church and almost forgot where it was. Must have been a stressful day. Speech itself does seem to be the foundation. Because we're never taught to talk to ourselves. Because we're never taught to talk to ourselves. Nobody tells us to start talking to ourselves. We just start doing it as soon as we learn how to talk. I don't like to throw a whole lot of references at you. I will usually include references and citations and studies and stuff. But if you are interested in learning more, Lev Vygotsky, a Soviet scientist, psychologist in the 30s, wrote about this in a work that was published later on called Thinking and Speech, in which he suggested that internal speech originates as external speech directed at the child by their parents and the other adults in their lives, which then gradually becomes more and more internalized. But it's not even just vocal speech, interestingly. You may have noticed that the letter blocks that this child is learning from in this perhaps preschool environment on the screen there all have hands connected to them with sign language symbols. There's sign language on the sign behind them. Did you know? Deaf people will sometimes sign to themselves in the same way that people do self-talk. In fact, some individuals who are deaf from birth 100% indicate that they still have an inner voice. It's just in the form of images. They don't hear an inner voice like we hear an inner voice, but they see images that serve as their inner voice. I think that's absolutely fascinating. We ask, remind, promise, and tell ourselves things. It's a social act turned inward. Elisa Keys, you say it makes sense because it's such an integral part of how we experience the world in some kind of language. Yes. However, the means is that we think, whether it is in signs or in audio, verbal words. But it goes even further than that. Something even further than that. And what could it go even further than a child and how child... How do I want to put that? But it goes even further than that. How much further could it go beyond childhood and learning this as a child? Well, we can go all the way back to monkey. Something that is even more fascinating to me. In some primate studies even, chimpanzees who have been taught signing will sometimes sign to themselves. This monkey, Washoe, at times was observed signing quietly the word quiet to herself when she would sneak into places in the yard she wasn't supposed to be. When she didn't think anyone was watching her, and when she was sneaking around, she would sign the word quiet to herself. That monkey, yes, Washoe, was indeed verbalizing her own thoughts to herself using the sign language that her trainers had taught her. So there is evidence that even other creatures have a sort of self-talk. Deaf people who have been deaf from birth, who do not hear anything, still have a kind of internal voice, a kind of self-talk in the form of images. But further about why we do it, why we do this, why we talk to ourselves that way. Well, what is speech? Or signing, or whatever form it is? It's communication. Yes, communication is information exchange. So why do we do it? Why are we communicating to ourselves? We already know. What are we telling ourselves that we don't already know? It would seem pointless. If person A tells something to person B, they tell that person for a reason. But if person A and person B are the same person, well, it would seem pointless. There is one really good way around this paradox. There's one really good way around this seeming paradox, is if person A and person B are not actually the same person. Does that mean this self-talk voice in our head isn't really us? It's a very interesting question, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But however it arises, whatever the mechanism is, the purpose seems to be that it increases our self-awareness. It helps us in several different areas, in problem solving. It helps us in situating ourselves socially in the world around us, and in thinking things through. It seems to help us figure out who and what we are, and what we can and can't do, how we relate to the world, what our resources are internally and externally. It can be as simple as talking out a math problem, or talking out how we're going to get the job that we want. As Ralsei is putting it, talking to themselves, trying to deal with their own ego. Their self-awareness may help you get brought back down to earth. Self-talk seems functionally to increase our self-awareness. That is, without an accurate and detailed awareness of ourselves, our relation to the world, the people in it, it would be almost impossible to solve problems and accomplish our goals. We're telling ourselves what we know, person A to person A, or rather what we think we know, as if we were another person, to sort of order ourselves around, to give us an assessment of ourselves in relation to the situation. So it serves a cognitive purpose, helping us to process and plan things, helps us in behavioral sense, motivating or deterring us, perhaps from things that might be harmful. And also help us to process and talk out emotions. But also, the more that we focus on ourselves, the more self-talk we do. So the more internal we are, the more introspective we are, the more self-talk we do. And the more self-talk we do, the more internally focused we are. So it can be a vicious cycle. We're going to pause here and do a little bit of an exercise. Before we get any further, I want you to just tell me, if you can remember, if you can call back to it, what your inner voice was like when you were developing. Before we talk about who that voice is, tell me who that voice was for you. Was it you? Did it seem like someone else? I'll give you a moment to think about that. And Bruce, you say, for you it was mostly from a bully. And it does take a ton of work to deprogram Zetsun Alpha, exactly. Mortham's inner voice is Mortham, or it's static. Yours was much kinder, Wes, but also not quite as separate. Very hard to think back that far, Anomalisa Keys. Very true as well. Hard to call back that far. Dragon, it sounds very much like it does today. A little bit different for everyone. Ortham, you say it can sometimes be a very mean version of yourself. Yes, it certainly can. At Foxwitch, you have different voices with different personalities and beliefs and desires. Hard to choose. And Rebert, sounds like yourself on a lower tone. It takes on a bit of a different voice altogether. Sonic, you have a couple different in your head, a pirate, a cowboy, and Shoddy? Shantae? Ralsei, your self-talk is mean. Say it reminds you what you actually are rather than what you pretend to be. Doesn't sound anything like you. Got a bunch of them, Empress. Or else you say it feels like a vice. It can feel constraining, restricting, telling you what your boundaries are. Let's see. Well, to go further into how it gets that way, there are a ton of influences on why our voice in our head is like that. In part, it comes to us from the way we learned speech, the way we hear other people talk to us, the way we hear other people talk to each other as we're developing, as our brains are developing. We learn to talk to ourselves the way we saw other people talk to us. The wording we use, the phrases, the tone, they're all learned from outside of ourselves. We're not just the sum of those things, but they do influence that voice. Even the grammar, the language used. It's a bit of an old joke, but in some languages there are many different words for snow, for example. There are languages in which personal pronouns are not used very often, so you don't refer to I or me as often. That would certainly have an impact on how we talk to ourselves. People can think in different languages, different wording, different phrasing, different concepts. Some languages may seem more individualistic or more collective than others. That's just the different languages. Within each language, there are many different cultures, different lived experiences. And as you have probably already assumed, our parents or our guardians, the people who brought us up, play an enormous role in our self-talk. I'll be very frank with you, right up front, class. I can very clearly hear my old man's tone influence my inner voice when I do self-talk. Sometimes I can very clearly hear myself call myself by my name the way that he did, with the same tone, same exasperation sometimes. Even a very specific experience can influence that voice. A particularly strong memory, whether it's positive or negative. There was a time when I was a kid, a really little kid, elementary school. I was playing in the gravel parking lot in the tiny little church that I used to go to as a kid during recess. And it was a gravel parking lot with a bunch of little stones, and I was absentmindedly kicking the stones, and I kicked one, and it went flying way farther and harder than I thought it would. It went flying across the parking lot, and it hit another kid right in the face, right in the nose. And it broke his nose, and he was gushing blood. And the teacher freaked out, absolutely freaked out, and grabbed me by the arm and said, "What the F is wrong with you?" It was the first time I'd ever heard the F word, and it freaked me out. And sometimes I can hear a little of that voice, a little of that tone, a little of that influence when that specific phrase, "What the F is wrong with you?" happens to be one of the things I say when I screw something up. Remember that story, Utopia Tree? Yeah, it's something that has stuck with me so strongly. All of these things are in addition to you, not just you, your personality, who you are, the person you are, but also every experience you've had, all the people who have influenced your upbringing, the language you speak, the culture you grew up in, the way people talked to you as you grew up. All the elements, media, they all influence that voice you hear when you talk to yourself. So who is it? Who is that voice? Who is the voice in your head that is talking to you when you do self-talk? Well, it's you. But it's also not you. It's you and everything else. It's you, but as developed by and through everyone, everything that's had an effect on you. It's you through a mirror darkly. There are so many layers of filter between you and the you that talks to you. All the preconceived notions and biases and ingrained patterns of behavior, all of our learned judgment, our helplessness or perceptions that others have passed on to us, it's all of that together. You are not the voice in your head. All those passing thoughts aren't the tangible person, or, if you prefer, the intangible spirit that you are. And this egregore, or this amalgam, whatever you want to call it, it's important, but it's not you. It's not who you are. As a brief aside, I could say we could connect this with the conversations we've had before on hypnotherapy and guided meditation. You know how all of those layers, all those filters, those are the things that those techniques try to get behind, to get to the real you. Behind all those filters, those layers. So it's us, but not us. It's us. It's our brain. Passed through and influenced by every other filter we've ever had. But it's not quite us. You're both the receiver and the observer. You are person A and person B. You're not just your thoughts. It's you, despite everything. But you're not your thoughts. So the next exercise I want you to do is to answer this question. If it's not inborn, if it's not something we're born with, not something that we do automatically without learning it, what does that mean for this lesson? What does it mean that it isn't something we have when we are born? What does that mean for this lesson? Very important, very interesting concept Anomalisa Keys raises. You almost see it as the opposite of masking, the most extreme aspects of yourself viewed through these lenses. Imposed societal expectations and beliefs. Henry Berry, you're exactly right. It's something that we develop through interactions. Anomalisa Keys takes that all the way past the goal line for the touchdown. Yes, that means that it's something that can change. If it's something that we are not born with, it means it's something that we can change. It can be altered. It can be influenced. It doesn't have to stay that way. If your self-talk tells you that you are just being whiny when you are talking about the things you're going through, it doesn't have to stay that way. It was influenced to be that way. It can be influenced to be different. It can be more difficult to change, but it can be changed. You weren't born smoking cigarettes, I hope. You weren't born talking to yourself negatively. That self-talk can change. So, let's do that. Let's talk about the ways in which we talk to ourselves negatively and how we can change them. That's going to be the most important part of this lesson. Because yes, we're obviously here because so much of our self-talk is negative. I'm sure that's not a surprise. Negative self-talk is pretty familiar. There are a lot of different ways that psychologists, sociologists, therapists have broken down the ways in which we talk negatively about ourselves. There isn't really a singular, unified identification system. But I've taken the most common ones, and I've put them into this chart for ourselves to think about how we can categorize these negative self-talk patterns. Things like, I can't do this. I always mess up. What's wrong with me? They're gonna hate me. Because we love acronyms, I wanted one that I'm sure you'll remember, which is CAPCOM. We're gonna break this down into 6 categories. CAPCOM: comparing, amplifying, polarizing, catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, and mind reading. These are the 6 categories that we're going to slot this self-talk into. So let's talk about the first one, comparing. This one is particularly important for someone like myself or other content creators, streamers. The very old saying that is sometimes attributed to Theodore Roosevelt: comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison. Comparing yourself against others, against expectations that you have or that others have for you. Comparison can be helpful in giving yourself an honest assessment of, where am I? How far along am I? But it's an incomplete picture. Comparing never really gives you an objective look at who you are or what you've done. Comparing is that instantaneous, I'm not as good as blank. Why can't I do what blank does? That is a very singular, narrow-focused perspective. It's a one data point comparison. It doesn't take into consideration where you came from. It doesn't take into consideration how far you've come from where you were. It doesn't take into consideration anything else you've done or anything else you've accomplished. Example, perhaps, as Henry notes, the grass is always greener on the other side. Perhaps. Why don't I have what they have? They wouldn't make this mistake. Is that comparison even valid? Accurate? It doesn't even matter because your brain does it so automatically. It's like someone who's debating with you in bad faith. They're gish-galloping you. They're just raising point after point after point without giving you a chance to refute them. Most or even all of the things that could be telling you are false. But it doesn't give you the chance to see it. Since Cyrus, that saying, as I always heard, is the only reason you should be looking into another person's bowl is to make sure that they have enough. Yes. And it may not have been Teddy that said this, but comparison can be the thief of joy. Comparison is also one of the most common and most powerful of the negative self-talk categories. The next is amplifying. Self-talk where we zoom in on every flaw. A heightened belief in our failings, the sense that everything we do ends this way. Never on any of the good things. We never amplify the good. For some reason, our self-talk is never outrageously good. Wow, you're the best. It is, as Maya notes, perhaps believing that you're inferior simply for being different. I mean, there might be perhaps people who are egotistical, who only ever think of themselves as the best, but why don't we ever do that to ourselves? Gas ourselves up. Why isn't our self-talk amplifying our positives? That is the second and another very powerful category of negative self-talk. Are we amplifying something negative? We're taking one small failure, one small flaw, and amplifying that to be this enormous, huge mistake that a smart person would never make, right? The third category is polarizing. Putting everything into black and white categories, or all or nothing thinking. Either you do that thing, or you are that thing, or you're perfect, or it's a failure. It's either good news or bad news. I think that wouldn't give you delusions of adequacy. It would give you the correct perspective that at the bare minimum, you are enough and adequate. Self-talk that is critical doesn't necessarily have to be false or harmful. It can be an honest critique. But is it usually? Generally, it's not. Polarizing thinking, black and white. Either you do it perfectly or it's no good at all. The fourth category related to that is catastrophizing, where every mistake, every small failure or error must lead to the worst possible outcome. There's no nuance. Every trivial error means not only are you wrong and bad, but it's going to lead to enormous disaster. It isn't just that this mistake I made was something a smart person wouldn't make. It's that this mistake I made ruined my life. I got my phone stolen, so now my entire weekend is ruined. This entire event that I had planned and prepared to go to for so long is now ruined. Or did perhaps thinking about it that way actually be the thing that ruined it for me? But I catastrophized it. Look, think about all the money I'm going to have to spend. Not going to be able to take any pictures of the stuff that I'm doing. God, I'm going to have to look up directions. Not every mistake or error is the end of the world. Annalisa Keys, you messed up your eyeliner wing, and now your friends will know you're ugly forever. The next category is overgeneralizing. Thinking that I did blank equals I am blank. I failed at something, so I am a failure. I was too emotional about something, so I am too emotional. Taking some general statement and labeling you as that thing, some immutable characteristic that can't be changed. This pie chart, what you feel like in the moment, a failure, even though what you actually are is a billion other things, with a tiny sliver being someone who failed at something. You stole a pack of gum as a kid, does that mean that you are a thief for the rest of your life? I mean, a Skyrim guard might not ever let that go. Stop right there, criminal scum. You have committed crimes against Skyrim and her people. Your stolen goods are now forfeit. But no, you're not a thief because you stole a pack of gum as a kid. It isn't who you are. The things you do aren't what you are. Not an immutable characteristic. And in fact, so many of these things go back to the catastrophizing in that they feel so strong in the moment, which is why it makes you feel like a failure. You feel like that. You may feel that way. But most of these things are failings and mistakes and errors that you won't remember next year. If I had a bad grade on a freshman math exam, do I even remember that later on? I mean, I do still remember cringy things that I did when I was younger, but that's a whole different story. Maybe we'll talk about that in our next lesson next week, if I can finish that lesson on cringiness. Like when I was at the gym and someone I know who worked there was talking about these cool pictures they took, and I thought they were talking about pictures they'd taken of members of the gym because they'd been doing that the previous day. Like, oh, cool, I want to see those. But they were talking about pictures of their family vacation. And I'm sure the next day they were like, why the heck was he asking to see my family vacation pictures? And I still think about that years later, because there's something wrong in my brain. But that's a whole different story. And the final topic, the final category, is mind reading. The presumption that you know, or you are pretty sure about what others are thinking or feeling or believing about you, and that it's negative. These are negative self-talk comments that interpret everyone else in the least charitable way possible when they interact with you. It assumes the worst. Negative self-talk that assumes they're going to hate me. They have a separate group chat without me. They're talking about me behind my back. This one also never gives you an objective sense. This one can be very hard to catch yourself with, yes. Because it's your brain making assumptions about other people's brains. You've made these little puppets in your head of the other people you know. And they're like the little Wojak dolls in your head, and you're playing with them, and they're saying negative things about you. Just put the dolls down. Don't make any of those assumptions. It is too late. I have already depicted myself as the weak soy. And the other person as the Chad Jack who is making fun of me behind my back. So those are our categories. Comparing, amplifying, polarizing, catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, and mind reading. They're not accurate. So what does this do to us? We know we have this voice. We know that it's partially us, filtered through everything else we know of and has influenced us. We know it can be supremely negative. We know it can sound like a horrible bully over our shoulder, telling us that everyone doesn't like us and that everything we do is bad and what's wrong with us and what we can't do and what's going to happen about it. What does it do to us? Well, because we keep burying ourselves in all the negative, it can worsen existing depression, especially with the mind reading and catastrophizing. Can make it hard for us to make genuine connections. A lot of missed opportunities come from our negative self-talk. We talk ourselves out of doing things. But it has physical outcomes as well. It can increase your blood pressure, raise your cortisol, the stress hormone. It can increase inflammation. It can lead to insomnia, feel fatigued. It is, in some ways, Empress, actually, yes, like a computer virus. It self-replicates. All of these can occur or be worsened by our negative self-talk. Very self-reinforcing. And that reinforcement makes it feel like we deserve that abuse. We can start to wallow in it. But I don't want to focus on this. I don't want to dwell on this. We've categorized the negative self-talk, talked about why we have self-talk and how it develops. And yeah, it can do these bad things, but let's focus on something else. Let's say enough. How do we stop it? How do we change it? If you want to. If you're ready to. We're going to stick with 3 simple steps. There are a whole host of ideas and therapies that are used, and if you want to seek those out, I think that might be a good idea. But if you want to start simple and just start doing some things on your own, here's 3 simple strategies we'll try. We're going to stick with the acronym ICP. Identify, challenge, and perspective. We're going to identify what the negative self-talk is. We're going to challenge it, and then we're going to put it into perspective. We're going to take a hatchet to these things. We're going to uplift ourselves. We're going to gas ourselves up. We're going to identify, challenge, and put these things into perspective. So the first thing is identifying our negative self-talk. This is an enemy bard. This is an evil bard that might attack you. In identifying your negative self-talk, it's a bit like when you want to train a dog. You want to correct the behavior as it happens. You want to catch your inner critic in the act. This enemy, it relies on stealth. It relies on sneaking up on you, hitting you before you can react, hitting you before you know it's there. This critic, this inner voice, relies on stealth. Attacking with that psychic attack, that negative piece of self-talk, immediately when something happens. I'm going to catch it in the act. You have that negative self-talk, you hear that negative comment, catch it in the act, and then label it. Name it. What type of self-talk was it? I drop my keys, which I do because I can be very clumsy since the brain injury. Say, God, I'm so stupid. What kind of self-talk was that? I caught it. It is negative self-talk. I could say that it was black and white thinking. I dropped something. Does that make me stupid? Am I stupid because I dropped my keys? No. I mean, I might be stupid for other reasons, but no. I caught it, and I labeled it. And I reminded myself, as Rao says, I am not immune to gravity. Yeah. I caught it. I heard that negative piece of self-talk. Why did I call myself an idiot for dropping the keys? Okay, what kind of self-talk was that? Well, it's pretty black and white thinking. Then identify the method. How did it sneak in? And by that I mean, what was happening? Was I stressed that day? Was I hungry when it happened? Did I maybe not have a very good night's sleep beforehand? What were the circumstances? Maybe there was a reason why that happened so quickly and so easily. Catch that critic. Catch it in the act. Call it what it is. And think about how it got to you. How you were feeling. What you were doing. Be your own pop-up blocker. Your inner critic, this bully, is very heavily reliant on you presuming that it is you. Its strongest effect is when you allow it to just play in the background, constantly dragging you down. Like a debuff. It's constantly debuffing you. But don't just let that play unchallenged, uninterrupted. That second stage, challenging it. I want to confront that thought. Challenge it directly. Challenge the statement itself. Deconstruct that statement. Interrogate that bastard. Is it true? Is there any evidence that it's true? Perhaps there were alternatives. Was the automatic thought even true? Maybe it was true. Our self-talk isn't always lying to us. It isn't always false. Make it prove itself. Don't just assume that it's correct. Make it make its case to you. Is there any evidence that this weird homunculus that tries to bring you down, is there any evidence it has that it's telling the truth? When I forget to defrost the meat that I was going to use for dinner, and I say that I always screw this up, I always forget that. It seems very innocuous. It seems very small. But it's that inner critic constantly playing that debuffing bard song. And I know that it's not true. I know that I haven't failed to take the meat out of the freezer every single time. I know that I don't always do that. When I confront the critic about that, maybe it can sputter up some evidence that one or two other times it's happened. But then it falls apart. And then you can start interrogating the reason. Why did it say that? Does thinking that help me in any way? Is the homunculus helping me in some way? By telling me I'm stupid for always forgetting to defrost the meat? Maybe there's some kernel of, I'm just trying to make you not do that again in the future. But we don't teach people that way, do we? When I want to help a student remember something or learn a new skill, I don't berate them and tell them you're so stupid and you always get this wrong. So why would I teach myself that way? I can take steps to learn not to forget. Can maybe set an alarm, like Maya says. Yeah. I can take steps to remember and to learn and not to make the mistake again. But I'm not going to berate myself and say that I'm stupid and always forget, because I obviously don't always forget. Otherwise, I'd never be able to cook dinner. And that third step is to put it into perspective. What's the context? Is it a big deal? Was the automatic thought true, of course, in your challenge phase? Is there any evidence? But was the issue even a big deal? And would someone else say it to themselves? Would someone else call themselves stupid for forgetting to defrost the meat or dropping their keys? Or saying something stupid in your group chat? And would you say it to them? Would you say this out loud to someone else? Would you talk to your friend the way you talk to yourself? Would you say this to someone else? Would you say this out loud to someone? If I heard someone talk to my friend the way I sometimes talk about myself, I might punch that person in the face. How dare you talk about my friend that way? How dare you say those things to my friend? So why would I say it about myself? Let me put it this way. You heard my story earlier. I'm at that convention. You overhear me saying all those things about myself after losing my phone. What would you say to me? We're friends and I'm here and you're overhearing me say those things. What would you tell me? Later on, I thought about what would I say to someone else if it had been someone else, if it had been them. Stop it, I'm awesome, Dragon says. Yes, perhaps. If I had had a good friend there, you know what I might have done? I might have told them, hey, let's focus on the convention. Maybe I might do my best to help them have a good time for the rest of the convention. Take their mind off of it. To not let it be ruined. So let's practice. Let's reset. They don't have to be positive things either. You don't have to reframe them all with these gaudy, saccharine commentaries about how great you are. They can be neutral. In fact, sometimes that's even better. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, about the brain health aspect. Let's reset with some of these examples. Shifting from negative to positive. And this may seem trite, it may seem cliche, but you know what? If it works, it works, and if it's true, it's true. I'm not good enough or doing enough. You might have heard this one in your own voice a lot. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. Consciously reframe that. I'm doing my best. I'm doing what I can. About I'm so stupid. I made a mistake. It's not the end of the world. You're not telling yourself that you're great or that you didn't make a mistake. You can acknowledge that you made a mistake and then diffuse it. It's not the end of the world. I always mess this up. No, I can learn from this. That's positive. A learning moment, a teachable moment. Go from a negative, I can't do anything right. I don't have this just yet. Neutral. You're not lying to yourself and saying you did it right or that you've got it now. Still honest with yourself. You didn't get it right. I don't have it yet. Yet. Keep it open. Yet. Nobody likes me. I'll let that one hang in the air for a second. Nobody likes me. An obviously false thing that our inner voice has told us. Obviously somebody does. There are people who like me. I'd like to have more. I'll never be as good as blank. Pretty obviously that one falls into the comparison category, right? I'll never be as good as blank. Do you have to be as good as blank? Do you have to be as successful as blank? Are they better than you at 100% of everything? Are you that person? Or can you work with your own strengths and weaknesses? Why does their amount of success matter? Does it mean there's less success available for you? Certainly not. Yes, Maya, that can be a very tough one to get rid of. That is a very catastrophizing, sort of amplifying category. Especially if there are people who, I know there are people who do dislike me. I know there are people who don't like me. Hey, there are people who don't like me. I know that. Some of it, perhaps some of it I've earned, but perhaps people just don't like me. It can be easy to look at the people who don't like me and say, wow, a lot of people don't like me. And that ignores all the people who do. Yeah, you can't please everyone. In fact, it's sort of a disservice to all the people who do like you. If I focus on the people who don't like me, it means I'm not really paying attention to all the people who do. I'm discounting or downplaying how important they are. In my capacity as a streamer, in the comparison category, look at other people and think, why can't I be as successful as them? Why aren't I as big as them? It would be nice to be bigger. It would always be nice. But does that kind of sound like I'm treating all the people who do like me and who are here with me as not enough, as insufficient? Yeah, do not gaslight yourself. Exactly, Henry Bear. I'm a failure. That's that black and white category. I'm a failure. Is that even possibly true? What does it even mean to be a failure? You fail at everything? I'm a failure. No, you've had setbacks. Maybe you failed at something. Maybe you failed at doing a thing. But doing something doesn't make you that thing. I mean, like, I guess you murder someone, you could reasonably say that person's a murderer, but yeah, those are extreme examples. You get what I'm talking about. This is too hard for me. You don't have to lie and say that it's easy. You don't have to challenge that piece of self-talk and say, no, it's easy. That wouldn't be true, and it would kind of honestly actually make you actually feel worse that you couldn't get it. Wow, it's easy and I still couldn't do it? No. You can acknowledge that it's hard. This is really challenging. It's neutral. You can practice this. And I mean practice. This is not a one and done situation. This is a skill that needs to be practiced. You need to apply that process. You need to take that hatchet and be like that juggalo and identify when those pieces of self-talk happen, challenge them, and put them into perspective. Whoop, whoop. Some of the consistent things you might have seen in those examples is that the negative always focuses on lack, something that you don't have, some absence. It's relative to someone else, to what you used to be or used to do, things you've done in the past, mistakes you've made. Focuses on the most unlikely or the worst outcomes. It's fear-based. It also ignores all the good things you've done, all the good things you are, all the resources you have. It also ignores the fact that everyone else on Earth is making the same mistakes and sometimes has those same thoughts. Whereas the neutral always just focused on the simplest fact. Things like, it's not the end of the world, because it's not the end of the world. I mean, if it is, then, I mean, that's it for all of us. Hello, comet. Goodbye, planet. Neutral are also focused on undeniable statements, like, people make mistakes. Undeniable. You can't deny the fact that everyone makes mistakes. And it tries to diffuse your initial knee-jerk emotional reaction. I think you're absolutely right, Dragon. Self-talk, even critical self-talk, does have its place. Thinking about something being challenging, for example. I think the important distinction is that when you find something that is really hard, and that piece of self-talk hits you, that's when the interrogation is useful. Let's break this statement down. Is it too hard? It might be. It might actually be. That's true. There are things that we can't do. There are situations in which, hey, it might not be possible. We don't just want to accept it at face value. We want to think it through. Okay, my brain told me this. Is it true? Well, let's think about it. Can I, at my height and my physical capability right now, dunk a basketball? Well, let me think it through and work through the possibilities. Well, no, that probably is too hard for me. I can arrive at that conclusion and accept that it might be too difficult. But I didn't just accept it in the moment. I didn't accept the immediate knee-jerk self-talk about it. Positive alternatives focused on the best possibility. What can be done. What our resources are. What we're good at. What we've accomplished in the past that indicates to us that, we're not a failure. We've done hard things before. Some really interesting evidence is out there, though, that third-person self-talk may actually be better than first-person self-talk in some aspects. That I versus you. And what I mean by that is when our self-talk is, I'm always this, or I want this, or why did I do that? Even if it's positive, right? Like, I can do this. Yeah, some evidence out there, some studies, like this Cross et al. Study, Self-Talk as a Regulatory Mechanism, How You Do It Matters, 2014. And other studies from physical activity research Statements that are more like, you've got this. You can do this. You've done harder before. They aren't better than you. You just made a mistake. You got it done. That third person gives you a sense of objectivity. It makes it seem like it is coming from someone else. Like someone is giving you this affirmation. It feels more objective. I'm not just gassing myself up. This is more objective. It's true. You're distancing yourself from the statement. Feels more like you're exerting control. There's a space between you and the activity. Some other tools that you can try to employ in working through your negative self-talk. You might just give yourself an automatic positive response or an automatic neutral response. That ANT there, that was just an ANT, stands for automatic negative thought. That's what these negative self-talk things are. If you don't have time to go through that identify, challenge, and perspective process, you can at least cut the legs out from that enemy bard and repeat this sort of mantra. It was just an ANT. It was just an automatic negative thought. Forget it. And move on. Don't dwell on it. If you don't have time, if you're busy or got a lot going on in your head, don't have the time to go through that process, you can also just do this. This is sort of your stopgap. Take that stinky ANT and throw it in the garbage. You can make your own little acronym or code word or whatever. I don't know. Anytime you have a negative thought that you don't have the time to really sit down and challenge, say that was bogus. It was bogus. I'll deal with it later. I'm going to steal your food from the picnic. Of course, you can practice mindfulness, which is just beneficial in general. It can be just beneficial in general to develop a mindful practice. Because the more conscious thoughts you have, the less automatic thoughts you're going to have. We've done mindful practices in the past in our class, and we'll continue to do them, so you can learn about them here as well. But try to be more mindful of the thoughts that you have. Aegis Ant Farm. Yeah, Rousey, just dismiss it. It's a negative psychic bolt from the demiurge, from the egregore, from the homunculus in your head, the cop in your head. You can also try to find yourself an accountability buddy, a support character, and find yourself an allied bard to buff you against that enemy bard's debuff. And you can help them too. Someone who will ask you about your self-talk today. Maybe someone else who is struggling that you know. And maybe you're both having a hard time with negative self-talk. Hey, how about we, once a day, message each other about that? Hey, what was your self-talk like today? You tell them, hey man, you know what? Sheesh. I said I was such an idiot because I forgot my sister's birthday card. And then he can be that person that tells you, I mean, I did that too last year. It's not a big deal. Everybody does that. I'm sure she had a laugh about it. Accountability buddy. Is this all really, really that important? Yes, it is, of course. Because on top of everything else that we talked about, the issues with anxiety and increasing inflammation and stress and insomnia, all of those things that can worsen our self-image, the things that you tell yourself you do eventually come to believe. We've talked a little bit about memory in the past as well, and I think it was even in our previous lesson where I talked about a big way in which our memories are formed is by the stories we tell ourselves. And if the stories we keep telling ourselves include us as the villain, well, we start to believe that we are. These thoughts become self-fulfilling. They reinforce each other. If the purpose of these thoughts, if the purpose of our self-talk and why it developed is to help us be more aware, to increase our self-awareness, to understand ourselves, situate us in context in the world, these automatic negative thoughts, they're giving us a distorted version of that. They're not giving us an objective awareness. It's doing the opposite of our goal, making us less aware of ourselves. Accurate self-talk might be negative at times, but it wouldn't be negative all the time. It would be positive at times. It would be neutral most of the time. We'd be able to act more objectively and work towards our goals better, solve our problems more effectively. We were honest with ourselves. Many aspects of our lives are impacted by our self-talk. But we can change it. I would never talk to almost anyone the way I've sometimes talked about myself. And that's something I work on and try to change. You know what I would do to someone if they talked to a friend like that. You know the reputation badgers have. I've said that many times throughout our lessons, throughout the year and a half, 2 years almost, that we've been doing these lessons in these streams. Self-care and these mental health topics, I don't just give you platitudes or empty positivity. Part of why this lesson is focused more on what self-talk is, what the consequences are, how to stop it, rather than just giving you a lot of positive affirmations. You can get that from any self-help influencer. You can look up positive affirmations and get those from anybody. But I want them to be more honest. Self-care is a practice. It is a work. It can take work. It's a work that's very valuable and very important. It would help you live a longer, healthier, happier life, which is the whole reason why I'm here, the whole reason why I do these lessons. And if you are doing well, you think that you can move your self-talk in the right direction or that it's positive, you can help others. It's incredibly rewarding to help others with their problems like this. You can be a role model. You can exemplify positive self-talk for others. We shouldn't be self-deprecating out loud. At least not out loud. When we call ourselves a loser or an idiot, even in passing jest, make denigrating comments about ourselves in our group chats, social media, what does that signal to other people? Probably not something good. We can show a more positive example, and we can be there to support others. Yeah, you don't have to be aggressively positive, but you can be more optimistic. And you can give them positive feedback. You can give the other people in your life positive feedback. Tell them the good things about themselves. And if you hear your friend make self-deprecating, negative comments about themselves, if you're in a position to do so, if you have that kind of friendship, challenge it. Don't just let those pass. You can teach them some of these techniques we've talked about. Imagine that you can not only improve your own self-talk, which could improve your life in many ways, you can spread that ability to other people. All the small ways that all the people you know would go through their life feeling just a little bit better and a little bit more accomplished. Because the tongue is sharper than any two-edged sword. I didn't really get into the science of linguistics about all this, because there's a whole host of things we could talk about there. How these small changes affect us psychologically. But it's true that specific words have immense power. A single word at the right time can hurt or heal someone in ways that are very powerful, even if we don't see it right away. And that's another thing I've talked about before too, right? You cut someone off in traffic and you flip them off like it's their fault, and then they go through the day feeling sour, and they, don't get as good a night's sleep that night, and maybe they don't perform well in the interview at the job they were trying to get the next day, and maybe they don't get that job, and they can't pay their rent, and who knows what the things you do and the things you say affect other people. Who knows? Don't really know how the ripple effects will spread out. But why not make them positive? Why not make them positive to yourself? Those negative self-comments might make you the person who has trouble the next day. Maybe feels too insecure about doing something you wanted, going out with friends, asking out that new person you wanted to, applying for that job, sticking through it even if you didn't get the job. It might be the thing that makes or breaks it. I also didn't throw a lot of references or science-y stuff at you because I don't really like to do that. We do sometimes for fun, but I also wanted to highlight here that this is not just philosophy. This is not just psychology. There's hard science that has been done about this kind of thing. There's just been a lot of study about this specifically. This particular piece of research, this figure is pointing out that significant correlations were found between regional activity and psychological assessments in the brain regions, showing the interaction effect between voice identity and emotion regulation strategy. So, what does that all mean? This particular study found that neutral self-talk was extremely effective when distancing and diffusing emotional reactions. When people were played back self-talk that was neutral in their own voice, it activated regions in the brain that would help them to distance themselves from negative emotions and to not catastrophize, in a sense. They also found that hearing positive affirmations from others, or hearing them in others' voices, was really beneficial as well. So that, going back to the previous slide, is a good reason why you should be uplifting to others. That's why you should be objective with yourself and be kind to others. That is all of the content that I have for you on the lesson, but I, as always, open this up for any comments, questions you have, any additional discussion you want to have about it, feedback, suggestions, about anything. We can just chat for a little while. But in the absence of other questions or comments, I just want to make sure that you get this certificate if you would like it. You can join the Discord and I can get this to you with your name on it. You can join our Discord for successfully completing our self-talk lesson this May the 24th, 2025. I'm so glad that you were here with me and that we could learn about this important topic together. Thank you so much for watching this lesson. I hope you enjoyed your time and that you learned something you can take with you. If you did, please like the video and follow the channel here and on Twitch so you can catch our games and lessons live. You can also watch our previous lessons at the links on the screen. And thank you for supporting independent and educational live streaming and VTubing. That's all I have for you today. Class dismissed.